Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast Why You Do What You Do. The podcast that talks about human development and psychology to hopefully help you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. And last time we were talking about entering matrimony. That's a big deal. Shouldn't be taking it lightly. A lot of younger brides are more in love with the wedding than they are with the groom, which should not be the case. So we're going to take back up in there. To help newlyweds adjust, some traditional societies give them extra privacy. And that's usually good because usually the relatives want to pass you around, you know. Oh, well, let's have a little party. You can come over here. And then you have all these 20 aunties and grandparents and things on both sides who want you to come to their house. And you have to like schedule it or hurt somebody's feelings. So it gets to be a production sometimes. In other societies, their sexual and other activities are subject to prescribed rules and supervision. Back in the day, back in England, if it was a royal joining, they were watched by officials to verify that the consummation of the marriage had happened, you know. And even the bride would have a rag of sorts put underneath her to show the blood where she had been a virgin and there was blood. So that's creepy to us nowadays. But in some other cultures, you know, everybody's different. So, in some cultures, newlyweds set up their own household. That's true here in America and most, you know, Western countries. In other cultures, they live with parents, and sometimes that's true here. It just depends on the situation. Temporarily or permanently. In some societies, such as the Rajputs of Kalapur, India, husband and wife live, eat, and sleep apart. So they don't even live in the same house together. In contrast to Anglo-American cultures, where the chief purpose of marriage is seen as love and companionship, the sole purpose of marriage in a Rajput society is reproduction. So they only get together when they're trying to make a baby. Emotional and social support come from same-sex relatives and friends. So they basically see the husband or wife as the way to get children. You know, and the rest of the time they hang out with family and friends. Sexual activity after marriage. And the joke is, yeah, some people don't think there is any, but there is. Americans apparently have less sex than media image suggests, and married people do so more often than singles, though not as often as cohabitators. So married folks, you know, we're getting a little more action than single folks are, but not as much as the two young folks shacking up. Face-to-face interviews with a random sample of 3,432 men and women aged 18 to 59 found that only about one-third, including 40% of married couples, have intercourse 2 or more times a week. So if you find yourself in that, don't feel bad. That's the norm. You know. However, married couples report more emotional satisfaction from sex than single or cohabitating couples. And that's important for me. Like I said, I even when I was younger, I couldn't be a bed hopper. It just don't feel right to me. I like that emotional connection with my mate. You know, I want that. So most married couples have that. So to me, that's a better way. Frequency of sexual relations in marriage drops sharply after the early months and then declines gradually as time goes on. So if you're having less sex than you did when you guys first got married, that's normal. Satisfaction with the marriage is the second most important factor after age, though it is unclear whether satisfaction influences frequency of sex or the other way around. And I think it's probably the other way around. When I was not happy in my marriage, I certainly did not feel like having sex with the person. I think that's probably true for most people. Some married people seek sexual intimacy outside of marriage, especially after the first few years, when the excitement of sex with the spouse wears off or problems in the relationship surface. And that's called cheating. A lot of people do that. But that's not right. That's my opinion. That's, I believe, God's opinion. No adultery. That's supposed to be the rule there. Because that comes with a lot of problems. And if you thought you're not happy with your marriage now, let your spouse find out you're cheating. You're really not going to be very happy with your marriage then, because they certainly won't be. So don't look at your spouse as a new toy. And once the excitement wears off, oh, I gotta go check this other. No, you need some impulse control if that's a problem for you. It's not like a box of candy. You don't taste this one to see what's inside. Then you decide you don't like that one. You want to try this one. That's not how it is with people. People have emotions, and if you make a commitment, you should keep that commitment. You should stand up for that commitment and do what it takes to keep that commitment. Otherwise, don't make the commitment if you can't do that. It is hard to know just how common extramarital sex is, because there is no way to tell how truthful people are about their sexual practices. But surveys suggest that it is much less common than is generally assumed. Because I'm sure people, you're at the mall and the survey people were there, and you're like, are you cheating? No, of course not. No. Yeah, okay. In one survey, only about 21% of men and 11.5% of women who were ever married reported having an extramarital relation during their married lives. And of course, like I say, you're not as likely to tell the truth, especially if your spouse is standing right next to you while you're doing this survey. That's kind of crazy. Extramarital activity was more prevalent among younger cohorts than among those born before 1940. So our grandparents back in the day understood that a commitment was a commitment, and you're supposed to keep your word, and it's a commitment, and after that, the boomer generation, feels good, do it kind of thing, weren't so committed, and even my generation, hubby or wife makes you mad, bounce off and find a better one, and that's why my children's generation is kind of down on the whole idea. They're doing it, but they're a lot more cautious than we were about it. Extramarital activity was more prevalent among younger cohorts than among those born. Well, we said that. However, fear of AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases may have curtailed extramarital sex since its reported peak in the late 1960s, and that should be the late 1980s. It does say 60s, but no, it's the 1980s. And early 90s. In a nationwide survey, only about 2% of married respondents admitted having been unfaithful during the previous year. So that's not a lot of people, 2% admitting that they had an affair. So, like I said, to take a good study of this is almost going to be impossible, because people are not going to tell the truth, because they won't get in trouble if they do. Factors in marital success or failure. One of the most important factors in marital success is a sense of commitment. If you want your marriage to succeed, you gotta be committed. That's why a lot of women are down on a lot of men. A lot of men act like the wife is in a committed relationship, but I'm not necessarily. My wife's married. Yeah. No, guys, especially guys. Now, women are bad at this too. Women are cheaters too. So I'm not just going to say the guys are. But if you're in a committed relationship, that's what it's supposed to be. It's a commitment, you know. And if you find yourself looking outside the marriage, then you need to look inside of the marriage and say, why am I looking outside? What am I not getting here that I'm looking for out there? And sometimes you might have to go to couples counseling to figure that out, because usually there's always a reason, you know. Among a national sample of 2,331 married people, the partners' dependence on each other played a part in commitment to marriage, but the strongest factor was a feeling of obligation to the spouse. And that's what it's supposed to be, because you made this promise to them. You should feel like you should keep your word. That's what makes you a decent person, if you want to keep your word. So, you know, think about that before you think about going somewhere else to get what you got at home. Because, you know, usually it's not, you know, dissatisfaction with the marriage itself. There's a problem that needs to be fixed in order for you all to be happy again. Let's face it, anytime there's a problem that drives you apart, it's because you're unhappy with the situation. And you need to find that place of happiness again. So you might need to go to therapy, couples counseling, whatever it takes, in order to keep your commitment to each other. Because you all loved each other in the beginning. That's why you got together. That's why you got married. So it's there, but sometimes it gets covered up with all the crap in life, you know, all the garbage. And you have to dig it back out, dust it off, you know, and renew your commitment to each other. Success in marriage is closely associated with how partners communicate, make decisions, and deal with conflict. Because if your communication is basically you're yelling at your partner, wanting them to do what you want them to do, that is not going to work. They're not going to listen, and they're going to resent the fact that you're yelling at them, telling them what to do. Making decisions. You all should be making decisions together. You should say, what do you think? I mean, my husband has learned that in couples counseling. Because before that, you know, I don't know. What do you think? You know, I feel like this. What do you think? And then we have dialogue, you know, which is something we didn't have before, which is a good thing, you know, because like when we were very young, we talked all the time. But then when we got married and people wanted us to be grown-ups, then, you know, we felt like we had to be staunch and strict with each other. And, you know, like most young couples start to parent each other, and that's bad because, you know, that's not going to work out for you. So communication is key. And both of you, it should be a joint decision, you know. Think of yourselves as the board of your household, you know, your co-chairmans of the board, and it's your decision you have to make together to go on with whatever needs to go on, and dealing with conflict. If conflict starts and you answer that with conflict, you're just going to have more conflict, and it's going to escalate. You know, that's something that happened in my second marriage. You know, I wasn't going to take some stuff, and there was stuff being dealt, so I was dealing some stuff. And then the conflict escalated to the point where, you know, there was some physical altercations that should have never happened. But if that's the way you deal with conflict, that's probably how it's going to go. So you have to learn that if there's some conflict, you have to use your words. Just like they teach you in preschool, use your words, not your fists, not your hands. Use your words. They teach you that in couples counseling too. You need to use your words. Talk about, you know, when you said that, that made me feel like this. You know, and there may be, oh, I didn't know, I didn't mean that. You know, had a bad day, which is no excuse. Like I say, stop at a park or take a, you know, 10-minute break before you get out of the car, listen to some music or whatever. Don't bring it into your house. Don't take it out on your partner. You know, life is rough. You might have had a hard day. Don't take it out on your partner. That's not their problem. That's not their fault. They had nothing to do with it. They were at home, you know, or at their office. They don't know what the heck happened to you today. So, you know, don't let conflict become more conflict. Don't escalate each other's moods, because you love each other, but you also know how to push each other's buttons. You know where the sore spots are, and you know how to, you know, well, he hurt me, I'm gonna hurt him. Oh, she hurt me, I'm gonna hurt her more. You know, and so don't do that to each other. Learn how to talk, use your words, and of course, if conflict starts, if someone is abusing you, stop it, because that will also only escalate. And if you're being abused, you are well within your rights to call the police, secure your children and take them somewhere safe, and have this person removed from the home. That is well within your right, because you should not live in an abusive situation where you fear for your life. So if the conflict gets to that point, you need to stop. You need to stop, and you need to stop it. Now, like I said, I have gone through stuff with my husband. He had to go to anger management, bipolar skills training, couples counseling, because he did the wrong things. And I used to work with a woman whose husband did some wrong things, and he went to jail. You know, she went ahead and sent him to jail. So he was in jail for 18 months, and he got out, and she said, okay, here's what's going to have to happen. She did just exactly what I did. You're going to have anger management. You're going to have to go to counseling and couples counseling. So, and usually, if you do that with someone, they don't make the same mistake twice. But that's the problem, is getting them to do it. Because a lot of people who are abusers, they like the power, they like the control. That's one of their things. So only a few are going to be willing to repair things, because repairing things takes it out of their control. That it's then in control of the system or the counselor or the other person, you know, and it's out of their control. So if the abuse is a control issue, they're probably not going to be willing to go through this for you, and that's not about you. It's just they didn't love you enough to be able to do that for you. They might not have been raised in a good situation. They might think that control is all they have, and they could also be narcissistic sociopaths who, you know, don't really care. You know, they found you, they could find somebody else. So, you know, don't bemoan a situation that goes too far that you have to walk away from. Arguing and openly expressing anger seem to be good for a marriage. Because if you're talking openly, then you're communicating. Whining, which women, unfortunately, we're pretty good at, because we get our feelings hurt, and we do whine, like, well, you didn't do this, why didn't you? You know, and men aren't mind readers, you know, especially, we had this discussion yesterday about women helping men emotionally, and men helping us, you know, physically and financially and things, but men aren't as emotionally astute as we are, so don't expect them to be. You know, defensiveness, if you're always defensive, if you're always right, again, that's a problem, because you're not. Stubbornness, oh Lord have mercy. Men especially, you know, no offense guys, there's women like that too, but men especially can be very stubborn, because a lot of men were raised with this macho, you know, upbringing, that where the man is supposed to be the man, and men are supposed to be like this, and manly men, and you know, that sort of thing, and that leads to stubbornness, that they're not going to yield. They're the man, they're the boss, you know, this, I'm large and in charge, and yeah, well, see how that works for you guys, because your wife is at some point going to be like, okay, I'm over this. You know. And withdrawal are signs of trouble. Like person just pulls away from you and doesn't want to talk to you anymore, gives you a cold shoulder, that's a sign that they are not up for this emotional discussion. So that can also be a sign that they're not able to handle strong emotions. Yeah, where are we going here? Okay. About 150 couples who were followed through the first 10 years of marriage. Those who learned to fight fair, which is something they teach you in couples counseling, were 50% less likely to divorce. So, my hubby and I are hoping that the third time's a charm, and we're going to be all good from here on out. Of course, we argue about things and have discussions about things, and, nothing's perfect. But we're closer to where we started than where we ended up. So that's getting better. And now, practically speaking, I'm going to talk about dealing with domestic violence. Because if some of you know me, I ran a women's ministry outreach and education for 17 years, dealing with domestic violence survivors. And I ran a charity for 9 years that helped survivors of abuse to get psychological first aid, counseling, help them, get some classes under their belt to learn things and hopefully get into the job market to have a better life for themselves. So this is something that is near and dear to my heart. So I want you guys to definitely be aware on this point. Domestic violence or partner abuse, and that's what it is, partner abuse. You're abusing your partner, is the physical, sexual, or psychological maltreatment of a spouse, a former spouse, or an intimate partner so as to gain or maintain power or control. And like I said, that's what it is. When someone is abusing you, they feel like they're out of control of the situation. A lot of people have control issues. And if they feel like they're out of control of the situation, they feel like they need to take control of the situation, and abuse can occur. Its full extent is unknown because it generally takes place in private, and victims of often do not report it because they are ashamed or afraid. And I was both. I was ashamed that this was happening because, the first time around we had argued. There were some harsh words, and there was some infidelity, and but I gave him a second chance. So I was ashamed that I gave this person a second chance, and then they turned around and became abusive. So that was one of them for me. And then also afraid because now this person's, bipolar. They came down with bipolar. I say it like it's a cold. It's not, but it shows up later, usually in middle age. And they were treating us this way that they had never been like before. So I was also unsure of what was going on. It's like my husband's gone crazy. What the hell? So yeah, I was a little bit afraid too. And a lot of people feel that way. They just are really confused. They don't know why is this person who supposedly loves me now is acting like this? What is this about? Wife beating is most prevalent in societies marked by aggressive behavior. So if aggressive behavior is allowed and even reinforced in men, women are more likely to be abused. Restrictive sexual practices, meaning, sex is not looked upon as something that should be happening on a regular basis. Inferior status of women, and again, there are places like that, and in America here, there are still a lot of us in our southern states, sorry guys, but a lot of it is to where women are still expected to be in the home raising the children, which puts them in an inferior status to the men. And there are religious uh, folks who think that is true, that the woman is to be subject to the man, and the man's the head of the household, and there's a whole movement about that. But nowadays, realistically, with the cost of living and the incomes, unless you married a pretty well-to-do man, it's probably going to take both of y'all to keep the ship afloat, as they say. And use of physical force to resolve disputes. So if he can't feel like he can argue or resolve the dispute in any other way, he's thinking he's going to just lay hands on you and shut you up. It is fairly rare in societies based on extended family households. Because, if you're living with mom or grandma or whoever, it's less likely hubby's going to start beating you in front of them, because then they're going to turn on him and beat him. So, that just makes sense. More than 9 out of 10 victims in the United States are women. But there are men. I had a friend whose son was being abused by his wife. And that's just a shame, And they are more likely than men to be seriously harmed. Because, let's face it, you guys are still bigger than us. We are growing. You guys are shrinking. It's evening out. But in the animal kingdom, a lot of females are bigger than the male of the species. In ours, the male is bigger than the female. And the way that sociologists and anthropologists say that came about is because the men were to be the hunters, the fighters. And so they had to be tougher, bigger, stronger, to kill the prey and to fight the other clan who wants to come and take their women and children. And the women were smaller but smarter and faster, so they could escape with the children and keep their progeny alive and safe. So we were made the way we were for specific purposes. But the men are bigger and stronger than us, so when they haul off and hit us hard as they can, there's going to be more damage done than if a woman hauls off and hits a man as hard as they can in general, unless you're a little dude with a big woman. Once a woman has been abused, she is likely to be abused again, because, like I said, it only escalates. Unless you can put a stop to it, and make him see the error of his ways, it's just likely to continue, because that's just the way it is. If it's like a little kid stealing candy. If he gets away with it once, he's going to try and get away with it again. So you got to intercede to stop that. Partner abuse occurs at every level of society, in all income groups, and I've seen it like from the poorest to the richest. There's no one specific group that's more likely to abuse, but where there is stress, there's more likely to be abuse. But the women at greater risk are young, poor, uneducated, and divorced or separated, because they don't have, the means to support themselves. So hubby's not happy that they're taking child support and, maintenance in a lot of states. You get alimony. So hubby's not going to be happy with that. But, he should have thought of that before he started laying hands on folks, is, the way I feel about that. But, men who intentionally injure women tend to have a less than a high school education, to be unemployed or intermittently employed. So, not the smartest guys going. But, there are smart men who also abuse their wives, and it comes down to control issues. They may have low incomes and alcohol or other drug problems, and to be the former or estranged husbands or former boyfriends of their victims. And that's usually about, we have on the news every now and then, you hear ex-husband came, killed the wife and mother, ex-boyfriend shot the wife and the new boyfriend, because it's all out of their control. It's all about the control. and they felt like they could not control the situation, so they're going to end the situation. So, if you have to escape a situation like that, make a plan. Get away, get a contact person, stick with your plan. Do not tell other people where you are. Do not stay with mom, grandma, aunt, whoever they think you would go to. Go to somewhere they would not think of, cousin, distant cousin, or, friend from back in school, somewhere where that's not the first place they go, so that if they show up at mom and dad's place or grandma's place, then they can call the police and say, hey, he just came here looking for her, he's got a gun, and bad things are getting ready to happen. There is no appreciable difference in domestic violence against black and white women. Like I said, it's not a class issue, it's not a color issue. Like I say, socioeconomic stress can add to it, because of the stress, especially if he's the only guy working and she's at home all the time and complaining about their life situation, but he can't help anymore. So that can add to it, but in general, it's a control issue. It's about people who feel out of control. They may have been raised with a macho attitude about being a man, and he feels like the woman is not respecting him in his manness, and that's just ridiculous, honestly. But it's a control issue. It's about a person who has control issues and they're out of control. And that's where I'm gonna leave you for today. I hope that helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, like and share. Went ahead. I'm still recovering from my shingles and things, but excuse me. Please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. That's all for now. Until next time.